Great. So thanks again for joining us tonight. I'm Chris Jacobs, the Executive Director at Pinewoods, and I am very excited about tonight's programming. And I have to say that our presenter tonight, Kat Dutton, was one of the first people who really taught me how to dance this summer, coming in as a newbie. Kat is a Scottish dancer and has been the one of the coordinators for the Scottish sessions 1 and 2 this past season, and then in 2019 as well. So they did a bang up job teaching me a few things this year. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let them continue on with the introduction. So thanks again for joining us tonight.
Excellent, thank you, Chris. I'm gonna pop up my screen share because I do much better with slides. There we go. Hello, my name is Kat Dutton. I use they, them pronouns, and I am here to talk about gender. So quick agenda, we'll do opening, some gender 101, thinking about identities, thinking about gender positivity because I love focusing on the good parts, have some question and answer time at the end, and as a part of closing, I have a resource list, some books, some websites I use. I would also like to share, here it is, share the link for anyone who wants to follow along at home. So I'm going to put that in the chat for everyone. There you go. Spoilers if you click ahead too fast. So my name is Katarina Dutton, or Kat most of the time. The words I use to describe my gender right now, agender, non-binary, or genderqueer, and if those aren't words that are familiar to you, that's okay. In the past, I've used the words girl, boy, bigender, gender fluid. Right now, my pronouns are they, them, or theirs, which means if you're referring to me, just like Chris did, you should say, this is Kat, they're a Scottish country dance teacher. I like English country, Scottish country, and contra. You might notice that those are the 3 dances of escape, which is my favorite Pinewood session. I like teaching math, I like ringing bells, I like looking at bugs, and I like talking about gender. It's something I find really interesting and exciting and fun and complex. A quick note about introductions in general, which is that when you introduce yourself, something you can do is include your pronouns. Hello, my name is Kat. I use they, them, theirs pronouns, which there's a couple reasons for this. Normalizing sharing the information makes it safer for people who might not have the pronouns you expect, who might be trans, who might be non-binary, who might just not conform to the gender you'd expect. It makes it safer for them to share their own. It helps people know what you want to be referred to. Just like we introduce ourselves with our names, so we don't have to guess. You look like a Shirley to me. You know, my name is Kat. That's how to refer to me. And it also helps break down assumptions. If I tell you I use they pronouns and you see me wearing lipstick and dangly earrings and you think that looks like someone who's a girl, you are getting extra information that, oh, hey, this person who looks like a girl is someone who isn't a girl, who uses different pronouns, and expands sort of your worldview. So just some quick norms to get started. I'm a big believer in being able to sort of set norms and know where we're coming from and have everyone on the same page. My big rule 1 is always be kind. Assume everyone here has good intentions. Assume everyone is trying to do their best. Assume that you're trying to do your best, and be kind, be polite to other people. Everyone is here to learn, including me. I don't know everything about everything, and especially I don't know everything about you. You are the expert in your own self and identity. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. If something happens, the intention can be very important here. If you make a mistake, you say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. You correct yourself and you move on. My big rule is that you get out of this what you put into this. If you have joined this Zoom meeting and you plan on spending the entire time staring at your phone, that's fine. You do you, live your best life, but you're probably not going to get as much information or have as useful an experience as someone who is trying the activities I offer up, who is participating in the chat, who is actively listening and actively being a part of it. And in case it's not obvious, I teach high schoolers, so that phone example is something I am unfortunately very used to. Speaking of the chat, I am a big fan of the Zoom chat, and I welcome anyone to open it up on the side and use it throughout the entire workshop. You can send messages to everyone that'll be public for the whole room to see, or you can send messages privately just to me, and I'll try to address them as I can. And then the last sort of norm, the last rule here is that you don't have to understand to accept or to support someone. You don't have to get why someone is a certain way to be polite and support that person. Even if by the end of this presentation you still have no idea what I mean when I say, well, I'm non-binary, I use they pronouns. I don't need you to understand, but I do need you to use they pronouns when you talk about me. All right, cool. So speaking of the you get out what you put in, I have a little activity to start us off. If you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, or open up a little notes file or something off to the side, I want you to take a couple minutes and make a list of 10 words that you think are part of your identity. Doesn't have to be the most accurate words, doesn't have to be the best words, just you're filling in the blank here. I am blank, or I am a blank. And for reference, my 10 words, I'll read them off so you can hear them. I am a dancer, I am a Girl Scout, I am a mathematician, I am a teacher, I am a sister, I am a bell ringer, I am a bicyclist, I am a gentleman, I am queer, I am a storyteller. So take 2 minutes to think of your own words. Have about 1 more minute to think of your words. I am a teacher, but there isn't going to be a test, so don't worry if your list isn't perfect. All right, you can set that list to the side. We'll come back to it in a little bit. So let's do some Gender 101. Here are some gender words to know that I'll be using throughout this presentation. Your assigned gender is something that pretty much every person has. It's the gender that was assigned to you when you were born, and usually it's based on your genitals. You were born, the doctor or the midwife or whoever was around at the time looked at you and said, I see a penis, I'm going to call this person a boy, or I see a vulva, I'm going to call this person a girl. And that's all they used to make that decision, was just that one body part. Your gender identity, on the other hand, is the gender or the genders that you actually identify as or feel you are. This can change over time, or it can stay the same. It can feel more or less intense at different points in your life. If you are cisgender, or sometimes just referred to as cis, it means someone whose assigned gender matches their gender identity. And cis is the Latin word for on the same side as. You match. You're right there with, doctor said it's a girl, and you said, yes, I do think I'm a girl. I identify as a girl. Meanwhile, a transgender person is someone whose assigned gender does not match their gender identity. Doctor said, it's a girl, and that person said, I think I'm a boy. Or maybe, I think I'm non-binary. I don't think I'm a boy or a girl. Or maybe something else entirely. So when we say binary, when talking about gender, we're talking about the two most common genders, male or female. And those two collectively are the gender binary. But someone who is non-binary has an identity other than male or female. It could be a blend of both. It could be no gender at all. It could be a third gender or some other way of thinking about their gender. Those are sort of the big ones. There are lots and lots of gender words out there. And if you can see my screen, you can see that's just about 20 or so I found without too much searching. Some of them might be familiar, some of them might not. Some of these words are somewhat outdated or considered kind of not as appropriate in our modern understanding, in our modern language. Some of them are very specialized. For example, the word two-spirit is, it belongs to certain Native American tribes, and generally it's not appropriate to use two-spirit if you don't belong to one of those tribes. And if you have questions about these later, like, feel free to ping me. I just wanted to kind of give you a sense that there's a lot out there that people will use to refer to themselves or to identify with. So the components of gender, we talked already about your gender assignment. And in addition to your gender assignment, there's your body. Your body has probably changed in your life. In fact, I think I can guarantee that everyone's body has changed at least a little bit, because no one here on the Zoom camera is a tiny baby who has just come out of their parent. We have all grown, we have all developed, we have all changed in different ways. Some ways we've liked, some ways we haven't liked. Your gender assignment is given to you at birth, but your body will change through your life, either independent of you doing things or with your intervention. If you've ever gotten your ears pierced, that's changing your body somehow. Your gender identity is a personal internal thing. It's how you see yourself, how you identify. What words do you use? What connections do you make? How do you feel about your gender? And your expression is sort of the outside version of your identity. Your identity is who you are in your brain, and your expression is how you show that to everybody you meet. If you're walking down the street wearing a big floofy skirt with lots of petticoats and lipstick and ruffly lacy top, that's expressing something about your gender. If you're walking down that same street the next day wearing baggy jeans and a big flannel shirt that's buttoned up and carrying, carrying a lumberjack's axe, that's expressing something different about your gender. However you dress, however you put on makeup, even however you move and flourish and speak is all part of your gender expression. So your body is kind of the physical stuff. Your identity expression is your mental stuff. And then your gender attribution and your gender role are kind of the societal stuff. Your gender attribution is what people think when they look at you, what gender they attribute to you. If people look at you and say, looks like a woman to me, that's what they're thinking. It might be correct, it might be incorrect. One of the things I'll encourage people is to try and be aware of this in your brain and be aware of how you are attributing gender to other people and what assumptions you're making. Meanwhile, your gender role is sort of, what does society attribute to your gender? If you say, I'm a woman, does society say, great, you must love being in the kitchen and cooking, and you must love fixing cars because those are womanly activities? Or does society say other things? This is a resource I love from the trans student education resources. It's called the Gender Unicorn. It's a sort of spectrum or map that you can place your gender on this map wherever you would like. So if I was to turn on annotations, if I were to draw, one of the things I really like about this is it breaks up the different parts of a gender, the different components, and it breaks up the different types of that component. So my personal gender identity, I identify pretty strongly with female and woman and girl. I also identify pretty strongly with male and man and boy. So I would place on both of those spectrums, I would say, I feel very highly there personally. I don't feel particularly strongly that I have another gender or a different gender beyond that. My expression, again, some days I'm very, very feminine. Some days I'm very, very masculine, usually a little less masculine than feminine. And anytime I can get away with it, I like being very other for mine. My sex assigned at birth, I don't tell people that because honestly, it's not anyone's business except my own and maybe the people who I might choose to let see me naked. Physically attracted to and emotionally attracted to, we're mostly not talking about sexuality in this presentation, but sexuality and gender are very, very closely related, and they have a lot of the same connections, the same experiences, the same things there. So I could potentially say, oh, I'm physically attracted to women or to men or to people of other genders, maybe in different amounts. And same with emotionally attracted to. I love this, like I said, because it's all these different parts and it's separating them. Just because I put high gender identity for female and male both, didn't mean I had to put my gender expression high for both. And didn't mean I would have to be any particular sex assigned at birth. So everyone does gender different. Everyone will have their own thoughts and their own sort of pieces of this. Let me clear my drawings. And I'm going to drop a link in the chat if you'd like to look this up for yourself later or to see it bigger or to print it out. Gender unicorn. There we go. Right. Turn off annotations. Excellent. So I mentioned gender identity. Go back to your list, and I'd like people to take a couple minutes to look at your list and think about, in your list of identity words, what words did you feel had to do with your gender? What words did you maybe feel have to do with a different gender or a part of a different gender's identity? And what words did you feel have no gender at all? So start there, just kind of thinking about the different components. And I'll put mine in the chat in just a moment. I put my example list in the chat. You can take maybe one more minute to go through your own list and think which words have to do with gender and are they more your gender or a different So thinking about your lists, did most of your words have a gender? And if so, was it yours or a different gender? And based on that, what parts of your identity were you prioritizing? Were you thinking a lot about gender because you came into this presentation and you've heard me say the word about 50 times already? Or were you thinking about other parts of who you are? This is a Pinewoods event, so I made sure to put dancer in my list of identities. And would anyone like to share? Please, if you want to share one of your words, either with gendered or not, I'd love to see it in the chat. So someone saying about half were about her gender and very focused on other people within her gender, saying wife and mom. Another dancer, someone saying cat person, ADHD. David Smuckler is distracting me and making me have to go look up a word, so I'm going to do that later. Traveler, someone with no gendered words at all. Great. Another cat person. Any dog people? Did anyone put that down on your identities? Seeker, wife, sister. Some people saying how many of their words were gendered, about half, 3 out of 9, 7 out of 10. Talking about words that are and aren't gendered, you know, aunt and uncle are very gendered words, and there's not really a well-known non-gendered version to mean my parent's sibling. Woman, husband. Someone pointing out that while their words weren't necessarily gendered, they do have sort of a traditionally feminine interpretation. Good. All right. So, excellent. So I'm glad we're thinking about this. I like the idea of thinking about this. Identity is really important to everyone, but what I found is that people have very different aspects of identity that they focus on. And my favorite personal example of that was I was at a school meeting one day where we were going around and introducing ourselves. And I noticed that I was the only person in the group to introduce myself using my pronouns, which felt necessary because I use they, them pronouns, which is not the assumed pronouns you would attribute to my gender. And then one of my coworkers was the only person to specify where he had been born. He had been born in El Salvador, and it was important to him to mention that he was an immigrant, that he was coming from that perspective. And I thought that was a really interesting moment, that both of us had an introduction slightly out of the norm from the rest of the group, but we were focused on very different parts of our identity. I didn't think to say in that group, I was born in Massachusetts. I was born in the United States. He didn't think to say, I use he, him pronouns. Both of us were sort of looking at different parts. All right. So this is kind of the same, what I was just saying, that gender can be very important to some people. It can also be very unimportant to some people. I have a friend who once sort of described it as, I'm a man, but I'm not that serious about it. You know, his opinion was that he had the assigned gender male. The doctor looked at him when he was born and said, that's a boy. And he said, okay, guess that works. And that's how he spent his life. And he doesn't let it define him. He doesn't focus on doing masculine activities. He wears a lot of skirts. He has very long hair. And he doesn't correct people if they call him they or call him she, because it just doesn't matter for him. I know other people who feel very, very strongly about their genders and feel very upset or hurt if people use the wrong words for them or make assumptions about what they can or cannot do. Yeah, so all of that's okay. It's okay to feel different strength. It's okay to have different feelings. It's okay to care more or less about different parts of your identity, especially at different points in your life. And the example I like to use when talking to my high schoolers about this kind of thing is that to my high schoolers, a big part of their identity is student. That's what they're doing a lot of times, a lot of their life, 6 hours a day, every day. Most of us here in this presentation are probably not strongly identified with the word student. We're not in school every day. We're not actively doing homework and taking notes and studying for tests and learning academia. Some of us are. I'm still in a school every day. So that's just one example for me of the way that your gender can have different strengths. I see a lot of people were talking about being a parent or being a mother or a wife, all of which is something that might matter more at some times than others in throughout your life. All right. And then RuPaul said this is one of my favorite quotes about gender. You're born naked and the rest is drag. Everybody is in drag, whether you're a man or a woman, it just depends on how extreme you want to go. And I will acknowledge RuPaul is sometimes seen as kind of problematic in the trans and non-binary community. He's not always been as sensitive as he could be, but I love this. And I love the concept that every single person is picking what they want to wear, how they want to present, and how they want to show themselves to the world. Everyone is choosing their own gender expression. You might not be thinking that you're choosing something, but by getting dressed in the morning, you're making some kind of choice. So gender is for playing, is my big opinion. It means so many different things. It means it can change over time. Everyone should experiment. Everyone should explore. Everyone should play with it occasionally. And it's possible that you'll play with your gender, that you'll try something different and you'll find, oh, that wasn't for me. That felt weird. That felt uncomfortable. I'm just going to go back to what I was doing. And that's great, right? Taking that time to try something different, to see if being different or feeling different or dressing different or asking the barista at Starbucks to put a different name on your coffee cup, any of that can be a small way of playing and can teach you things about yourself, right? If you ask the barista at Starbucks to put Kat instead of Katarina, maybe you learn, hey, that feels a lot better. I like it more. On the other hand, if the Starbucks barista called Kate, I would not feel better. I would feel kind of scrunchy and unhappy since that's not my name. And when it comes to playing with gender, I know this crowd has some amount of familiarity with it just because dancing interacts with gender so strongly and can, not always, but can come from a very, very gendered space. So even things as simple as if you've ever danced with someone who's the same gender as you, right? And that could be as simple as we all lined up for the contra and I really want to dance this one because I love the collar and the only other person here is same gender as me. Well, we'll go do our best. That's playing with gender. That's experimenting. That's trying something different. If you've danced a different role, if you normally dance on the woman's side or the robin side and you try dancing on the lark side, the man's side, that's playing with your gender. That's experimenting. If you've tried wearing a skirt to a contra dance when you normally only ever wear pants, if you've tried wearing a kilt and tie, if you normally wear a dress, that's playing with your gender. Would anyone like to put in the chat if you can think of another way to play with your gender or something you can do to kind of just have fun, explore, experiment? Some people mentioning haircuts or changing your hair. Changing your voice, that's something, I'm not a singer at all. I come at the folk world from the dance side. So that's definitely something that's really interesting to me is the idea that you could change your voice and speak higher or deeper and see how that feels for you. someone saying knitting, doing kind of an activity that is, knitting is fairly strongly associated with femininity and womanhood. But if you're a man or if you're a non-binary person, that's something different. Changing roles in the middle of dance. So not just dancing one role, but switching back and forth. I like that I've got playing as a male character in video games, and then immediately after it playing as a female character in video games. So if you play a video game, no one will ever see how you're playing except you. Good. So these are all things you can try, and they're all very low stakes. None of these really are permanent changes, right? Maybe cutting your hair if you had very, very long hair might feel permanent, but hair grows back. Good. Fixing the house yourself, learning how to do that. That's wonderful. Yeah. Initials rather than a name. I've been known to do that. There are some spaces where I go by K Dutton instead of Kat. Although one of the things I really like about Kat, Katarina has a lot of flow to it and is, as was once described, a princess name, Princess Katarina. But I like Kat because I've met other people named Kat who are women, and I've met other people named Kat who are men, and other people who are non-binary. So that can be a very simple way. I mean, heck, J.K. Rowling is someone who had a more traditionally feminine name and chose to go by a different, by her initials in order to be perceived differently. All right, that's timing, good. So gender positivity, like I said, I like focusing on the good parts, on the really positive parts of everything I can, but especially about gender. I think gender is fun, and I think being able to explore and being able to do things with it is fun. So first of all, here's the one meme I put in here. I give you the 3 genders. Seen at a bookstore, you can purchase the pocket guide to girl stuff, the pocket guide to boy stuff, or the pocket guide to mischief. And let me tell you, if you're giving me a choice between boy, girl, and mischief, I know which one I want. That is no question for me. So 2 more vocab words for the gender thing: gender dysphoria and gender euphoria. And both of these are words that are not limited to gender. Dysphoria is feeling sort of an unease or a dissatisfaction or feeling like things don't quite match. And gender dysphoria is specifically feeling that something about your body and your gender identity and your gender attribution don't fit together correctly. A lot of trans people experience gender dysphoria. They may feel like, oh, this body I have feels uncomfortable to me. It's not the body I wish I had. It doesn't have the secondary sex characteristics I wish I had. Me personally, I am not very good at growing a beard, but I would love to have a big bushy beard. And occasionally I just feel kind of sad that I can't just get that really fabulous, like Lord of the Rings dwarf beard with the braids and the hair everywhere. I think that would be great. Meanwhile, gender euphoria is the opposite. It's a feeling of joy, of satisfaction, and specifically for gender euphoria, of rightness, feeling that everything is lined up exactly perfectly, that you look the way you want to look, that people are referring to you the way you want them to refer to you, that everything is in line. Not everyone experiences gender dysphoria. Not everyone experiences gender euphoria, although I certainly hope that everyone can find moments of that at least sometimes. Some people don't experience either. My own word for this, I made this up, so it's not like it's a well-known term, but I think it's kind of gender nophoria. And that's how I feel a lot of the time, honestly. I consider myself largely to just not have a gender. I can be feminine or feel female sometimes. I can be masculine or feel male other times. But a lot of the time, I just feel like me. I don't need a gender to be a dancer or to be a teacher or to be a storyteller. Those are just things I do regardless. So we're going to take a moment and share our own euphoria moments. What's something that makes you feel euphoric about your gender, that makes everything feel like it's lining up correctly? It could be something about your body. It could be something about your assignment, your presentation, your role, your identity. And go ahead and just put that in the chat. And I'm going to put my small example Which is that I'm at that age where all my friends are getting married, and sometimes I get wedding invitations, and on the envelope they say Mix Katarina Dutton. And mix is a title word like Mr. or Miss or Mrs. or Ms. or Colonel or Reverend or Doctor or any of those. And mix is specifically a word that is used by and for people who don't have a gender. So when my friends affirm that, and not just affirm that, but on a serious adult piece of mail, you know, a wedding invitation is like a lovely thing. It feels so good. It feels so exciting to me to see that and read it and say, it's me, I'm Mix Katarina Dutton. Looking in the chat, some people are saying momming, just getting to be a mom. In fact, if you notice the last names, that's my mom saying that. Love you. Dancing in a skirt with lots of material. That is, I think, the swishy swirly is one of my favorite things all the time. Giving birth and the ability to give birth. Chest feeding or breastfeeding a child. Using a big wrench made someone feel manly as heck. Wearing the type of clothes but that don't specify, wearing clothes you like that don't specify gender in any way. Making earrings. Having an X on the driver's license, that's something that's been happening in some states. There's been a push for that, and I believe it's happening on passports soon, is that instead of having an M or an F on your identification, you can have an X for no gender or something else. Wearing a tie and a suit. Good. So attending a women's college, absolutely. I actually attended a college which Lesley University was women only until 2005, and I started attending in 2007. So I had a very interesting experience of being at a not explicitly not at a women's college, but having some of that environment of having very recently been that. Hey, hello to Kim. Wonderful. All right. So, this is perfect timing. It is 7:45. So it is Q&A time. If you would like to put in the chat a question you have about gender, and then in about 2 minutes, I'll share some of these questions, and I'll let anyone put their answers in the chat and share their own answers, and I'll share my own as well. And then these examples are from when I ran this with the high schoolers. So I didn't make these up. These are real examples they asked. How long does it take to figure it out? What if someone feels another gender but doesn't know how or doesn't want to name it? If you had to describe your gender as a bizarre abstract concept, how would you describe it? And as an aside, the answers to that one were magnificent. So take a couple minutes and put in a question if you have one. So maybe 1 more minute to put a question in, and then we'll share some of them out. And as an aside, I'm going to pull this question out specifically. Someone pointed out that I did a similar thing on my Facebook. I invited questions, and I assume good intentions. If you have a question and you think this might be rude. I'm not sure if this is actually a polite question to ask. Please ask it. I'll assume that you're here to learn and that you're here to try and like I said, try and learn. If it is something rude, I'll explain why, and I'm not going to say you're rude for asking that. I'll say it's not actually cool. For instance, please don't ask me about my genitals. That's not your business. You don't need to know that. And I'll say it's a little rude to ask about the genitals of someone you just met. All right, let's go through some of these questions. And I need my annotation on again, and text and orange, obviously. So any of these questions, as I put them up, if you want to put your own answers in the chat for them, I would be happy to see other people's opinions. So first question I saw was, how do you non-binarily refer to someone? So if you know the gender, or if you can assume the gender of someone, you can say sir or ma'am as kind of a respectful term. And any thoughts for how to say that, if you don't know their gender or you don't want to make an assumption? I know for a group, I use folks a lot, like, hello, folks, good to see you all, instead of ladies and gentlemen. Friend or friends. Annotations. Good. Dear one. I like dear one. No, sorry. I did this for almost a year. I am okay at using Zoom now. All right. So that's that one. Another question. Using they, is the verb plural or singular? They is, they are. Most people I know who use they as a pronoun use it as the plural. You would say, this is my friend Kat. They are a Scottish dancer. And if you pay very close attention to your language, you might notice that you already do that sometimes when you don't know someone's gender. Oh no, someone left their wallet on the train. I hope they are not going to need it later, or I hope they can find it. So someone put in the chat, or sorry, in the questions, a point about some people being against X gender markers on driver's license or passports because it might make it easier to discriminate. I think that sort of becomes a very personal decision. And I think there's already a lot of difficulty for a lot of trans people who may not have may not have personal identification that does match their gender, right? If you're a trans woman or a trans man and you haven't been able to change what it says, that can feel very dangerous anytime you have to show someone your ID, even if it's just like, I'd like to, go to the bar and dance with my friends. Well, I have to show the bartender, or I have to show the bouncer this piece of paper or this little card that says F on it or M. Is that going to be safe for me? So I think for some people, putting an X instead wouldn't be any less safe than already having something that doesn't line up with what they feel. And it could be euphoric. It could give them that positivity. So use of they pronouns, I think, is just how people like to respond. Any good ways to respond when you don't identify with a pronoun? So I'm assuming that's in response to something like if someone says, this is Kat, she likes to do dancing. What I would normally do is I try to just politely correct them. People make mistakes all the time. I sort of view it the same way as if someone said, this is Kate, they like to do dancing. I would pipe up and say, sorry, my name's Kat, actually. If someone says she when referring to me, I'll usually just say, oh, I use they pronouns. Or even if it's someone who I know has learned this in the past and just needs a reminder, I'll just say they. And that helps out. Book recs, I do not have good book recommendations for little kiddos. I have some book recommendations for older kiddos. Someone saying that they want to make cookies and give soft blankets and otherwise support people who are sharing. And honestly, the way you can support people like me is by going out and helping other people understand, right? If I'm sharing this information, I'm trying to teach people that gender can be bigger than you thought it was, and that gender can be all kinds of topsy-turvy, misaligned, little of this, little of that. And if you learn that and you say, okay, gender can be big and expansive and glorious and weird, I'm going to make sure that I tell other people gender can be big and expansive and glorious and weird. A polite way to ask pronouns, that's a great question. And I think the politest way is just, hi there, what pronouns do you use? Something that makes it easiest for me to share my pronouns is if other people start by introducing themselves with their own pronouns. Hi, I'm Kat, I use they pronouns is a very, very good lead-in for you to say, hi, I'm Chris, I use she pronouns, or whatever. And it sort of takes the onus off the assumption, right? If I start with my pronouns, I'm not saying, I think you look weird. I think you look like you use weird pronouns. I'm instead saying, hey, I'm going to recognize that you might want to know this about me and cue you to potentially share with you as well, or share your own as well. Is it disrespectful to avoid putting pronouns? That's a great question. So I use pronouns. I have them on my Zoom name. If you look, you can see it says Kat Dutton, they. I, for a very long time at work, was not out as non-binary. I knew that I was non-binary. I used they in my personal life. My friends called me they. But at work, I did not use that. I let other people assume things. And I would not put any pronouns because I didn't want to be called by the wrong thing, or I didn't want to make it seem like I was okay with being called by the wrong thing. Some people have a reason like that for not putting pronouns. Some people just don't feel strongly about their pronouns and feel like, putting in parentheses, whatever, is going to be too many words or too hard a concept to get across. Generally, if you can share your pronouns in things like your email signature, in Zoom, that kind of thing, it's a really useful thing to do. But it should never be mandatory. It should never be an expectation that you have to do that or that everyone in the group has to do that, because people don't always want to. People don't always want to. Yeah, people don't want to do that. I don't have a second part there. All right, still going through the chat. The specifying she and her. You'll see that a lot. Right, I've got my button today that I am they, them, theirs. And you'll see people say sometimes, hello, I use she, her, hers, or he, him, his, and the whole series. And that, I think, is sort of comes out of people who use what we call neo-pronouns, which are pronouns that are newer and maybe less familiar. If someone says, I use the pronoun Z, and I put that on the screen there in the annotations, you might not necessarily know that the other conjugations, the other versions of it are them and theirs. So most people know she and her and hers and can safely assume that. some people some people in some pronoun sets aren't as well known and don't necessarily have that assumption. It's also, honestly, it's a little bit of a cadence thing and sort of a poetic thing for me sometimes. Whether I say, hello, I'm Kat Dutton, I use they, them pronouns, or I use they, them, theirs as my pronouns. I'll say it slightly differently. I don't say, personally, I don't say I use they, them, theirs pronouns. That feels too clunky in my mouth. And I'll often, if I put my pronouns in parentheses, I'll almost always just use they for myself. Some podcast recommendations, political history of gender. Okay, by finding my labels, am I buying into a way to divide me from my fellows? That is a heck of a question. I'm going to write that down and invite anyone who wants to share their thoughts on that one. I'm going to write that down using the text. And I was sort of joking earlier when I said it, but comrade is a gender neutral way to refer to people. And you might see that sometimes, especially in groups that are unions or otherwise focus on solidarity with their fellows. And what I would say for that one, at least, I'll see if other people have any thoughts on dividing. My favorite comment about labels is to think about cats. Any cat you ever meet, the feline, not me, any cat you meet will tell you that there's a big difference between you deciding to go in the box and someone else deciding to put you in the box. If you pick up a sweet little kitty cat and attempt to put it in a box that it does not want to go to, it's not going to go well for anybody. But if the cat is prancing around and chooses to just jump into the box and hang out there, very simple, very different. And labels are the same way. Other people choosing labels for me, potentially icky, potentially makes me feel, me choosing my own labels, good times, works for me, means I get to use some really crazy words sometimes. And I see the clock, it is like 1 minute. So there's some good conversation in here. There's some Google, some book recs. Yeah, so I'm going to do that and clear this. And my closing really quick, your gender is okay, no matter what, so is everyone else's. Your gender can change. There's no time to figure this out that you have to have this figured out by. It's okay to play. It's okay that there are all these different parts to it and you might feel different ways about different parts. You can have one gender, you can have many genders, you can have no gender, and you can support and you can accept and you can believe other people even without understanding them. My resource list, I use My New Gender Workbook by Kate Bornstein. My mom has a copy of My Gender Workbook, the original, which I used to kind of steal when I was a 10-year-old and rifle through and be like, this feels really important to me. So I was excited that she republished it a few years ago. It's a really fascinating and very thorough book to think about your identity. Other resources here, Scarletine is an excellent resource aimed at teenagers, specifically for sex and sexuality, but expanding into gender topics and other related issues. I mentioned the Trans Student Educational Resources, also the National Center for Transgender Equality, and I put a link there to a website where they keep track of legislation that is on the docket that is being proposed that could harm or help transgender people. And if that's something that you feel strongly about, you should check them out and use that as well. In the chat, Anna Alter just put a link to the YouTube channel where you'll be able to see this presentation sometime next week. I'm going to put one more time the link to my slides. If you want to send me more info, if you want to continue the conversation, if you want to teach me something else, katdutton@gmail.com. And my last quote, as hard as I try to make you comfortable, the real comforting is going to have to come from inside yourself. And I love that you were all willing to come and look inside yourselves and try some of this out.
Awesome.
And I hope the chat will be available, but I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, I think we'll be able to make it available. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you, Kat. This was amazing. I've learned so much, and I had an aha moment that I have always been more comfortable with Chris. And so very few people call me Christina. And it's I'm like, oh, that's not my name. I'm a Chris. I'm a Chris. And it really explains who I am. So thank you so much I never even thought of it that way. So yay. Our next program is coming right up at the end of this month. Pinewoods Camp will be participating in something called the City Nature Challenge, which is a really awesome biodiversity study. I know, Kat, if you want to come down and take some pictures of bugs, we'll be here. But you don't have to come down to Pinewoods Camp to get involved with the City Nature Challenge, but I will be doing a training on Tuesday, April 26th. Anna is going to put the link in the chat feature so you can register for that. I'll be just talking about what the City Nature Challenge is, how it got started, and how to use iNaturalist to document species and make observations. And then we encourage you to go out into nature, take photos and upload those to iNaturalist. And then in May, we are going to be sharing what people found and discovered. So again, that is April 26th on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. We also just announced our work weekends, which are coming up, Memorial Day weekend, and then also the first weekend in June. That will be up on our website soon, so you can register for that. Anna posted the YouTube channel. This program will be up within a week, and then our previous presentations from earlier this winter are already there. And we're really excited to do these programs. It's the first time that we've done something like this. So if you want to make a donation to help continue these types of programs, Anna also put that into the chat. So with that, we're going to say goodbye. Thanks again, Kat. That was amazing. Thank you, Anna, for running tech. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and spending your Tuesday evening with us. So, and we hope to see many, many of you this summer. All right, I'm signing off now. Bye-bye.